Okay, so looking at the brief analysis, as you know, we are 2 weeks into this term, and so there are 4 weeks left to go. And we have a deadline of just after the half-term period of the 20th of February. So we have 4 weeks for the input remaining. The unit assessment criteria, we have covered 1.1 in some detail, explain in detail the differing education achievement of social groups by social class, by gender and ethnicity. You should already have written up something that would suffice as a response to this point. Now, the next part is split into two, which is 2.1 and 3.1. They are to be seen pretty much as two sides of the same coin. The coin being the explanation or the relationship that explains in unequal, the inequality in educational outcomes. We're going to consider first internal factors, and we're going to compare and contrast the two external factors that will explain or can explain these differences in educational outcome. The first, internal, I want to relate back directly to the perspectives on sociology work you have already done. Although not entirely, the list here of potential factors and explanations can be categorized by perspective. Namely, this is mainly agency, and we're looking at interpretivism, and in particular labeling theory, which we will develop onto. But so I can say what we're looking for 2.1 is to evaluate the differing relationships and processes that impact on achievement, for example, teacher and pupil relationship. Now, this is very much along the lines of Howard Becker's theory of the ideal pupil, and also the idea of Jacob and Rosenthal's study, Pygmalion in the Classroom, if you want to reference those. And it shows that teacher expectations lead to labeling, that is negative and positive labeling of individuals, which they react to that labeling process. And for some, anti-school subcultures are a result, and by anti-school subculture, it is those groups that are too cool for school, that hang around school, such as goths, emos, surfer dudes, punks, mods, casuals, whatever you want to call them, but they have an alternative status in the society of the school by taking on an alternative subcultures. There are pro subcultures, and we will look at that. But again, this is very much in the interactionist field of study. It is very much on the agency line. The hidden curriculum is the part where we pop out here and we go for a structural walk, as it were. The hidden curriculum is a Marxist concept, so we will be looking at that as a separate entity. It also will be related to a discussion of the function of education according to the lists. So that bit, we step out of this agency rather than structural role, but then we come right back into the organisation of teaching and learning. The organisation of teaching and learning is that area where how the tables are set out, how the work is handed out, how if you like, on a larger scale, who takes what tier of GCSE, and it too is very much to do with the organisation of teaching and learning. We will look at such sociologists as Ray Riss and I think Sharp and Green, who have done studies on how the organisation of teaching and learning is based on the assumptions of the teacher, again, very much like labelling theory, and the work set by the teacher the difficulty and complexity of the work set will vary not on actual ability, but maybe the prejudice of the teacher who sets the work. So they are internal factors, and they are to be contrasted to the external factors. As it says here, we are going to look at poverty, how you live, where you live is very important. We will talk about material deprivation, so that is quality of diet, the ability to be near the school, the quality of housing in which you live, the ability to pay for school equipment, and how these may detrimentally affect an individual's opportunity to access education. We are also going to look at, in contrast to the material deprivation, we are going to look at cultural deprivation issues, the likes of Basil Bernstein. Again, these are external factors. Basil Bernstein and Douglas and so forth put a lot of store on the interest shown in education of parents, the kind of activities that are likely to do with their children, and the support given. Language skills is another area. There are some cultural deprivation theorists who claim that it is a lack of language skills that prevents lower social class and ethnic minorities from accessing the cultural goodies of the educational system. Cultural capital, this is a theory by the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu, which is about the idea of combining cultural and material capital. Pierre Bourdieu is a Marxist, and he sees that cultural capital, high cultural capital, is used to exploit, to cleave between the middle class and the working class, and is a way of perpetuating an unfair and unequal capitalist system. Positional theory is again a theory which suggests your class or position in and of itself will restrict your access to other areas. What we're talking about here is the theory that if you take yourself out of your class environment, which would be the case from a working class background going to the middle class environment of university or grammar school, say, that there are problems with that transition, and this would explain the lack of, or the fact that fewer people make the transition from a working class environment to university, and more people from a working class background are likely to drop out of university once they are there. The other parts are a straightforward matter of referencing, but going on, spinning down, and just to repeat this again, task one, which we really should be on top of and should be able to get through to us, is an academic report in which you are to demonstrate very clearly a firm grasp of the educational trends concerning three groups, which are social class, gender, and ethnicity. If you can, I would recommend using less than 500 words to complete this task. However, you have 500 words to complete it. Now, the point is, the essay, assess factors assessing education achievement, both internal and external in the UK, should be an explanation for the understanding shown in task 1. Shouldn't be separate, distinct and different. They should flow together. They should be combined. And as it says here, the reasons for inequality outlined in task 1 should be discussed here. It should be achieved by comparing, contrasting internal to external. So really what might make your life easier is if you decide that external or structural issues are ones that are better explaining the inequality of educational outcomes, then you make a case for that and compare and contrast it to the agency or internal factors. For example, as I say here, if you're going to discuss gender differences in achievements, you could reference labelling theory. Labelling theory also would give reason for working class underachievement as well as ethnic minority underachievement in our schools. So if you reference labelling theory, you need to contrast it to external factors. So we could talk about, if I say, if you're going to talk about gender, you could talk about labelling and how that might explain why girls do better than boys. You could compare and contrast that and say which is perhaps more important to the changing position in society. And by that, I'm referring to the fact that over the last 50 years plus, the position of women in society has improved. In other words, there are greater opportunities for women in our society, so greater incentive for girls to work hard at school and gain the qualifications needed to advance their careers.